activities revolve around the fact of for those of you who are here for the first time, may not be knowing about Pragna Bharati. Pragna Bharati conducts various programs by visiting the institutions, different institutions, and also inviting eminent speakers from different fields so that they could share their knowledge and provide us awareness. And as part of that, today we have Dr. Ankit Shah. He's going to talk about how Bharat is going to be in 2047. Pragna Bharati, like I said, conducts various programs, and the content is recorded and we document it also. And in most of the cases where it is appropriate, we forward it to the ministries at the central government. And a lot of times it is considered very positively. And we bring it out in the form of a monthly magazine in English by name Bharati Pragna. And I request all of you, if you haven't subscribed for that magazine, please do subscribe. That is one way how you can support our organization Pragna Bharati. And we also identify eminent people who have done exceptionally well in their own fields. And every year we identify one person, we honor the person with the Pragna Puraskar Award. The most recent recipient being Raju Malhotra ji, who has been here in Hyderabad on our invitation. He spent 3 days here in Hyderabad, and that was an excellent program. He was the most recent recipient of Pragna Puraskar. And Pragna Bharati is very much active on the social media. Please do go there and like us, subscribe, and you share it with your friends so that we can reach more number of people. This is briefly about Pragna Bharati. And now, I request Abhishek Jignigaru to say a few words about his organization Uttishta Bharata and also introduce today's speaker, Dr. Ankit Shah.
Thank you, Chandrasekhar Garu. Very warm evening to one and all. My pranams to the dignitaries on and off the dais. So, a brief intro about our organization, Uttishta Bharat. We are a novice and humble organization with recent beginnings in Hyderabad. We are a think tank who intends to promote the idea of Bharat. It can be idea in any domain. The cause that we believe, through advocacy and training, we want to spread the idea of Bharat. And we also have a very active diaspora unit in UAE and USA. We have about 20 chapters in US, different cities of the US. That is about Uttishta Bharat and keeping it there. I would like to introduce the genius of our times, our young and dynamic speaker of today's evening, Dr. Ankit Shah ji. Firstly, I would like to thank him that he has readily accepted to come to Hyderabad despite his busy schedule. Thanks for that, sir. He has a very big profile. It will take a long time for me to read, but with his permission, I'm cutting it short and highlighting the important things. Dr. Shah is a fellow chartered accountant with over 10 years of experience in practice. He is a qualified company secretary. He has a master's in corporate governance and business policy. He has a diploma in information system audit. He has a level 4 certification in TAE from Australia. He is also a doctorate in interdisciplinary law, commerce and management. He is also a fellow on international human rights. This is his personal academic qualification. He is also a trainer, a professor of practice. He is engaged with the #1 academic institution in management, that is Rankman Business School in India, the IIM Ahmedabad, as an academic associate for finance and accounting. He also teaches in about roughly 10 colleges across India, and is consulting with several universities around the world, prominently in US, UK, Canada and Australia. He is also consulting in framing their syllabus and also as a visiting faculty in some of the institutions. He has also authored 3 books. His first book, Chakravarti Bharat 2047, he has also contributed 1 chapter along with several other co-authors. Importantly, today we have his book available with us, Geopolitics, Decoding Intents, Lies, Narratives and Future. So that will be available for us here. And he'll also be mentioning the book in today's talk. He's also working on his 3rd book since a couple of years, which is going to be very interesting and which will also share several details about the future course of economy of India. The title of the book being Sanatan Economics Model. Importantly about him is rather the best achievement accomplishment from Ankit Ji has been his prediction. He has predicted on several contemporary and important issues, including Article 370 and 35A and how the government would be dealing with it, the Doklam issue closure, LAC standoff, Balakot airstrikes, Pakistan's response to the airstrikes, the Russia-Ukraine conflict, China-Taiwan conflict, de-dollarization and currency world, banking and currency crisis, IT sector collapse with de-dollarization. Most of these, rather all of these have been very accurate, pinpoint, to the level which people have asked him whether he is an astrologer or an analyst. And that has also garnered interest in us to engage with him, to invite him and to listen to him. So I think I have covered most of the important parts of what is being done. There is much more, which we all know, I'm sure. So over to Dr. Shah. Thank you.
Abhishek and Pragna Bharati, thank you for hosting me and for the kind introduction that you have given. I come from the state of Gujarat, and now that you know what Gujarat means in Delhi, right? We believe in supplying Shah surname everywhere, whenever there is a need. And when we talk about these surnames, one of the derivations from the Gupta lineage, the surname Gupta comes from the meaning where we say the protector of Gopalan, and Chandragupta, and then the biggies that you had. One of the name was Shashank, that is from where the Sahas plus Ank, Sahas Ank. From there this surnames comes Shah, Saha, Shaw, Shaho, Shaodin, right? All these surnames come from there. And then, when you go to the Middle East, you are not surprised that you find that the Kedarnath comes parallel to the Jerusalem Temple Mount. And then you find that the Somnath comes parallel to the Kaaba. You should not be surprised, by 2047, if they tell you this information from there, right? That there were some 12 Jyotirlings which were in inner India, and there were 12 Jyotirlings in outer India. And India was what it was. That was the only thing that you had. And you shouldn't be surprised if they tell you that Jerusalem is nothing but the Ishwar Alayam, what Jerusalem is, right? You shouldn't be surprised by 2047. Much before that, if you find an Indian Prime Minister doing a Pran Pratishtha in Saudi Arabia, you shouldn't be surprised, right? You shouldn't be surprised a few years from now if you find that the UAE Air Force is subsumed by the Indian Air Force in terms of interoperability, right? Not that the fact that you know that they cancelled the US deals and then bought Rafales. UAE order is of Rafales, and each of the Indian Rafales flew through UAE. That was not just landing on the UAE ports, but mid-air refueling of the Indian Rafales happened by UAE Air Force, done by UAE Air Force. And then you find that they also have Mirage and we also have Mirage, right? You should not be surprised some years from now if you find that the Saudi combat forces not just training over here, they are also talking about interoperability. And then you shouldn't be surprised if you have a Chabar port over there in Iran, the Iranian Navy trying some kind of an interoperability with the Indian Navy. So from Saudi Arabia to Laos, Cambodia, because we recently have the news that we are working on reviving an Indian Mandir in Cambodia as well. And after 60 years, a Cambodian king is visiting India. With the new parliament that you see, there is no central hall for the foreign dignitaries because they will be coming and sitting in the Lok Sabha, right? That is the kind of changes that we are seeing, because this parliament is not just made for India, it's for the Indian subcontinent. And when we talk about Indian subcontinent by 2047, the representatives of all these countries should be coming and sitting in the Lok Sabha when those big policy decisions being taken. Shouldn't be surprised. You shouldn't be surprised by that, right? So how all of these things happen? I'll take you to this theory where I say that, any kind of a theology, the point of origin has to have two different coming out from it. So the entire world, you have only two belts, one which I call the Jammu belt and the second which we call as the Jerusalem belt. The Jammu belt gave two dharmas on Indus and two dharma on Ganga. The Jerusalem belt gave two religions. We should know the difference between dharma and religion. Dharma is diagonally opposite to religions in many, many ways. So in order for ideology or a theology to survive, two different needs to come out from the point of origin. This is my theory. Something, if I am to give a vague example, a single child is going to have lesser immunity compared to the children who have siblings, biologically speaking. You shouldn't be surprised if India meets Israel in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia becomes the melting pot. You shouldn't be surprised if UAE becomes an officially Hindu nation and Saudi Arabia becomes a Jewish majority and Iran a Christian majority much before that period. These are the kind of predictions I've put on my Twitter profile. So you can go and check those. Now, when we talk about a Chakravati Bharat for 2047, there are three elements of it. The first one is the re-emergence of Dharma. The second one is re-emergence of Sanatan Economics. And third element is re-emergence of Asia in the global order. When we talk about Dharma, how it is different from the religions of foreign origin, we say that we are Swatantra. Now the word Swatantra means self-governance. And when you say that you are self-governed, what that means is that document should have
place for the native dharmas mentioned over there. The document doesn't have that. So India was fitted with that punctured engine to begin with in 1947. And it was ensured that you never get those numerical strength and numbers to amend that document ever. So it has no space for dharma. It's made for religion. What is the difference between dharma and religion? Dharma is something that जो धारण किया जाए, नहीं आप क्या धारण करोगे? When a human being is born, is blank, right? उस पर कोई तप्पा नहीं लगा है. आप क्या धारण करोगे? जो आपको शिक्षा मिलती है, right? So Shastra is something which is for the internal security of your nation, the curriculum and the information outlets. Shastra is for the external security of the nation. And when the Shastra is not there in the curriculum, unfortunately you have to use Shastra for internal security. This is the pitiable condition that the civilization has reached. So when we talk about this difference between dharma and religion, you realize that there's a difference between what East thinks that the world is and what West thinks the world is. The East is saying you are the soul and body is the vehicle. The West is saying you are the body, soul is just a vehicle. So if you think that you are the body, that is what religions think, then you got only one life. So if you think that you have got only one life and you don't believe in life cycles, you are going to devise the format of living, the economic formats with which your countries run, with that fundamental assumption that there is only one life. You imagine the difference between how we are going to treat a fellow human being and nature. If this is your only life, you are not supposed to come back. That is the one life consumption model on which the Western economy, that is, I have to consume everything in this life because this is the only life, which means I have to collect the natural resources with whatever brute force that I have, which is endless wars, obviously. Now, what dharmas believe that since you have life cycles, your aim is individual liberation out of those life cycles. So there is no scope for mob beliefs or mob objectives to be achieved. Your spiritual individual liberation is going to be totally individual. There are not going to be any commandments. So the religions say that we are supposed to have a God-fearing life. The dharmas say we are supposed to have a karma-fearing life. Why do you need to fear karma? Because you are supposed to come back on the planet again based on your karma. The religions say, believe in an Adesh philosophy of commandments. If you check this points, this and this, then and then only you subscribe to that thought process and that part of that mob. Dharma comes from the Upadesh philosophy of recommendations. There's constantly question and answer, seeking. One is talking about seeking and darshan. The other is talking about being blind and following the commandments. Being blind, darshan. Totally opposite. The document has no space. What is the difference between, because I heard in the last 2 days people using the terminology temple. There's a difference between temple and mandir. Mandir is for elevating your inner self. Temple is for prayer and worship. The word prayer comes from the thought process of asking things, begging, which is not there in Dharma. You cannot ask for material benefits when you are seeking liberation. The difference between मूर्ति एंड आइडल. आइडल किसी का भी बनाओ, पॉलिटिशियन का बनाओ, स्पोर्ट्समैन का बनाओ, साइंटिस्ट का बनाओ, आइडल किसी का भी बन सकता. What we are doing Indians in the mandir is not idol worship at all. Murti is a physical embodiment of the supreme value which that Bhagwan represents, and you are trying to invoke that supreme value into yourself. You are not going there for anybody else. Completely different. There is no scope of God and follower. There is no God. There is no God and follower concept in the Indian Dharma, because there is no prayer and worship. Arti, Yagya, Anushthan, all these are completely different from prayer and worship. So this English language dumbing down of the civilization, which has costed us, and now you hear those kind of concepts of online darshan because the thought process is that you are going over there and contributing something you don't realize. Actually, you are not maintaining the mandir. The mandir is maintaining the life cycle preservation of the entire planet. You don't know this. Each of our mandirs used to have Gurukul inside the mandir campuses. Not colleges having a demo mandir, small one. No. That is the chart of the collapse of our civilization. The Gurukuls used to be in the mandir campuses, and it is through the Bhagwan that all the social interaction used to happen. There was no concept of a guru charging a fee beforehand. Guru Dakshina was always to be given after the student successfully demonstrates the skill which he came to learn. And since that amount which the community or the king or the monarch or the state is giving through the Bhagwan, there is no concept of commercial relationship with the Guru. You cannot misbehave with the Guru. You are not going to get any special treatment. Every student is equal. Not just that, the person submitting the money over there, not supposed to be arrogant because he's submitting it to the Bhagwan. The person taking the food or the prasad is not supposed to feel entitled or have any kind of a guilt that somebody is doing out of mercy or pity giving something to him. This is the kind of society which never required freebies or social benefits from the state. The concept of atithi, which says somebody is going to enter your home without giving you a tithi. He will not spell out the tithi. He comes to your home, unknown person, you are supposed to feed him the food. There is no concept of social benefits in this society. You don't require. There is no kind of freebies given. Prasad is a food. That atithi concept is also only food, which means you are physically empowered to go and work. There is no incentive to be unproductive to the state. Each of these Bhagwan have their own specific food, flower, fruit, rice species, you know, each of them having their own vehicle, animal and bird, telling you that you need to preserve all of these. Imagine if every Bhagwan is asking for a similar flower. What we are going to do with the rest of the flowers? This massive equipment which used to preserve the entire biodiversity on this planet got destroyed. So that Pran Pratishtha is not just of the Bhagwan. That Pran Pratishtha represents the life cycle preservation for you. That is the entire Mandir ecosystem, the entire economics running through that Mandir towns, which are eternal towns. Those cities which are built just on finite wealth, industrial hubs, they just got one life because they are based on that Western template of one life concept. Go to the Mandir towns, they will survive till eternity. Because each of these festivals linked to those that Panchang dates and the Tithis, and each of the products which are, around the Mandir campuses used, empower the family unit entrepreneurship in such a fashion that these businesses have cycles, right? Bhagwan aate hain, you do the celebration, 8-9 days, then you submerge, next year the Bhagwan comes back. They are talking about life cycle here. That is what happens with the economics along with that Mandir ecosystem. Those family unit entrepreneurship that is around that Mandir town, with those festivals passing on cash to the lower strata of society in a celebratory mode, you don't require a central bank to come and do some stimulus packages. Intervention in the economy. No surprise interventions. These are regular cycles going on in a celebratory mode. And then the state not just used to give the land, agriculture grants and whatnot, the tourism around that Mandir ecosystem. Besides that, every ceremony of the royal family, be it a royal birth, a succession or a marriage, entire ceremony end to end starts. The starting point is a mandir, the ending point is a mandir. So the entire congregation that happens, along with those animals which are also in the procession, that congregation is a separate trade. And these trade items are such that no capitalist is going to put up an industry on it. Because these are cycles of business, they won't do those capital investments. Which ensures the family unit entrepreneurship going along with that Mandir town. So when this Adam Smith came with his capitalism, talking about the benefit of division of labor, to give you an example, if there are 15 families making 15 different designs of shirts, Adam Smith came and said, let's kill 14 design of shirts. I'm going to put up a factory. Let's put those 14 families as jobbers. This is how today the US economy, the 1% carries 90% of the wealth of the society, and 27% of the American population is taking right now loans for buying food. If you can explain me what I am supposed to do with that kind of a GDP and per capita. This is Adam Smith's capitalism. Once Adam Smith was done with this, employing 14 families, Karl Marx came saying, जब आपने इतना एक्सप्लॉयटेशन कर ही डाला है सोसाइटी का, अब मुझे फ्री में चाहिए. Karl Marx is born out of that. While each of us, would understand the nonsense of freebies. We got to accept the fact that first we allowed the exploitation happen in the society, and then this freebies crowd came. One family unit has to produce a complete end product, and that complete end product or service is exchanged with another family unit or a community unit, making a complete end product or an end service. No overproduction, no underproduction, no poverty, no unemployment, no inflation, no exploitation of natural resources. This is the format of currency which went for thousands and thousands of years. Then came coins and the paper notes to make people believe that, this currency carries some worth. तो गोल्ड एंड सिल्वर के कॉइन्स आए, फिर किंग्स को लगा मेरा वेल्थ तो खत्म हो रहा है, दे डिमोनेटाइज्ड द गोल्ड एंड सिल्वर कॉइन्स, केम बैक, cheap metal coins came out, the kings accumulated the wealth. Then came paper notes. Now tell me, if this is the kind of massive population these countries have, I mean, we are right now topping the chart. But this has been true for, thousands of years of human history, that more than 50% of the world's population lives here in South Asia. Very crazy. Tell me the reason. The second country is China, and then there is United States. The difference between India and US, not 1, 2, 3, 4 times United States population cannot make one Indian population. Very crazy. What is the reason? Water. True. So the Indian subcontinent was there on the southern tip of the planet. From there it traveled and dashed with the Asian continent. And that is how the Himalayas were formed. So it is about that Tibetan plateau that is called the rooftop of the world, the largest source of fresh water anywhere on this planet. And from that Tibetan plateau runs down all the major rivers of these two countries, the Gangetic Plain and the Indus River, where the civilization grew, and the Yangtze River for China. It is because of these massive freshwater rivers that this massive amount of population could be sustained. What human beings were doing on this planet was majorly agriculture and farming. These rivers deposited tremendous amount of silt on both the sides of their banks. With that massive amount of agriculture was possible. Both the countries together had more than 50% of the world's population, more than 50% of the world's farmers, more than 50% of the world's agriculture, and that is how they had more than 50% of the world GDP. That is how both these two countries were so rich. On an average, the Indian subcontinent giving 27% to the world GDP till the year 1700. So out of 2000 years, we are saying 1700, that is 85% of the recorded last human history that we have, we were giving 27% to the world GDP. What suddenly happened? Industrial revolution came. So the Britishers, they landed in Surat, East India Company, the starting point of deploying pound as the single country reserve currency for the world. They landed in Surat, established the East India Company. Now there are references that many of these technologies were taken, stolen from here, broken here. taken over there, dismantled here. Now, one person sitting in a European factory could produce 1,000 times more than an Indian and a Chinese worker. The problem is, if I have to produce 1,000 times more, I need resources. So the Europeans devised a strategy. They conquered the important islands, the port cities, the entry and exit points of both these countries. They slowly subdued India and China, got the raw materials from here, sourced it back over there, produced finished goods, sold it back again over here. India and China falls down from more than 50% of the world GDP to less than 5%. What happens after independence? The same piece of technology which was so important to Europe slowly starts penetrating into Asia. Now an Indian and a Chinese worker are about as much productive as a worker outside. So if we apply a basic rule saying the whole world each person is equally productive, then obviously the country with the largest population supposed to become the richest economy. So India and China are right on track to become the largest economies of the world. The problem is, if I am to produce 1,000 times more, I need resources. You will be surprised to know that the whole human history, whole human economic history, is only about just one thing, and that is the Indian Ocean. 90% of the raw materials, resources, oil, gas, natural resources flow from this peaceful ocean. Both India and China now wants to produce 1,000 times more. They need resources. They apply the same strategy which Europeans did so many years back. They take up Hambantota in Sri Lanka. We take up Chabar port in Iran. They take up Gwadar port in Pakistan. India and China right now encircling each other in the Indian Ocean, just as Europeans did so many years back. But then there comes a twist after 2014 about currency. So there's a background about it, how pound was replaced by the US dollar as the new reserve currency. As I said, the only way to demonetize the world is accumulate the physical gold. So the United States collects physical gold from the European allies in exchange of war supplies from the Second World War. They collect all the physical gold and then replace pound with the US dollar as the new reserve currency for the world. So all the currencies of the world till that point with the gold standard, which means that you need to have some gold reserves in order to print the new currency. After Second World War with Bretton Woods, you get a very nice GDP formula. The GDP formula says consumption plus investment. This is for the performance, measuring the performance, yearly performance of the economies. Now a kid of 11th standard can tell you, 11th standard commerce, can tell you that if you are measuring an yearly performance, you cannot add consumption with the investment. Investment is long term. Now you wonder till date this GDP formula that it's still going on. Why did they added investment to the consumption? They had an endless printing machine. So their businessmen can take 10 crore loans today and invest, can take another 10 crores tomorrow. With the reserve currency benefit, the exorbitant privilege that they had of low interest rates and endless printing. So how did the dollarization of the world happen? Suppose 5 people are going to a hotel for eating. The US guy is telling, let's do one thing. We'll pay the bill in US dollar. बाकी सबको लग रहा है ठीक है इसके पास डॉलर है भरने दो इसको. Then the US guy is saying कि अपने पांचों एक दूसरे के साथ जो भी एक्सचेंज करेंगे लेट्स डू इट इन US डॉलर. 180 nations plus nations kill the demand of their own currency to artificially prop up the dollar. Two of the friends are saying, I do not have this many dollars. What to do? The US guy is saying, I'm going to open up 2 institutes called IMF and World Bank. They will give you dollar loans. The third friend is saying, I'm working 12, 13, 14 hours. Still I can't catch up to buy dollars to do any kind of trade. I'm slogging. I'm taking loans, तो भी नहीं हो रहा है. Looks impossible to me. The US guy says that this fellow has weapons of mass destruction. Saddam Hussein. The other fellow says, मैं तो एक कार्टेल बनाऊंगा. मेरे आजू बाजू जितने लोग हैं ना सब हम डॉलर में नहीं ट्रेड करें. गद्दाफी ऑफ लीबिया. Meanwhile, in the middle, they realize that there is a country which used to give 27% to the world GDP with agriculture, जो अभी भी एग्रीकल्चर से निकल नहीं रहे. तो वेव चलाएगा इंडिविजुअलिज्म एंड फेमिनिज्म. You start asking rights from your brothers, parents and sisters. 50s, 60s, 70s, my parents' generation. जो लोग उसमें बेवकूफ बने, सबने फैमिली से अपना हक मांगा, जॉइंट फैमिली कॉर्पस तोड़ा. They killed the agriculture sector and the entrepreneurship. ये जनरेशन वाले लोग फैमिली से अपना हिस्सा लेके अर्बन सिटीज में आए, कंपनीज को वो कैपिटल पकड़ा दिए, खुद बन गए जॉबर. Continues the British colonial agenda of converting the entire society into a perpetual begging condition called employment. Then they realized that this country produces a lot more talent. They start printing the fiat dollars. Take the talent there with those offers of high salary levels, the American dream. Then they realize that some scientists are still too much patriotic. We have a data 1500 killed till now. And out of that 1500, not a single you can trace has a Chinese or a Russian hand. Not a single. Then they realize that there are still people who are not moving out and there is talent. They give birth to a tech sector, offering them high pay for a coolie job. Somebody is a mechanical engineer, joins IT sector in that coolie job, gets a fiat dollar payment. Cities artificially propped up. Mumbai, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Chennai, Pune. Artificially propped up with a pay scale which comes directly from the Federal Reserve printing machine. Does not match with his mental or a physical output that he is doing. All the talent goes there. NRI remittances, fiat dollar tech sector payments. Then they realize that there are still people who are not yet trapped with this employment model, human trafficking from classroom to jobs. They come up with an e-commerce sector. The entire e-commerce startups go to the Wall Street Finance and Silicon Valley, take those notes, started selling below cost. No profits. What is the idea? The entrepreneurs got a fixed cost. उनके पास शॉप है, सैलरी देना पड़ता है, इलेक्ट्रिसिटी का कॉस्ट. Let's do one thing, sell in the market below cost. 1-2 साल में ऑफलाइन शॉप सारे बंद हो जाएंगे. The British classroom model continues to ensure by the age of 22, the product comes out blank. Totally blank. 15, 20 years, let's put them into 4 walls, that they don't think about independence. They have no idea about market realities. Let's plug in women teachers inside who have nothing to do with how market functions. Let's put 3-hour memory test which has nothing to do with entrepreneurship. Let's feminize all the men. The format continues. ग्रेजुएट हो रहा है, पार्टी दे रहा है, तीसरे दिन उसको पता ही नहीं कि उठना ही क्यों है उसने. Why he has to wake up? फिर पता लगा कि अभी भी कुछ लोग नहीं समझ रहे. स्टॉक मार्केट कैपिटलाइजेशन. पेरेंट्स को बोला जा रहा है आप इन्वेस्ट करो, सेविंग्स. Now that your product is totally dull, you need to invest somewhere else. This is how 1% in the United States has 90% wealth. Because everybody's savings being invested via stock market into companies. Because parents are very clear what their product is. The stock market capitalization is a proof that the British classroom format is a failure. Meanwhile, they face a crisis in the 1971. The Allies understood that this is the exorbitant privilege the dollar has, which is unfair. Allies ने बोला हमको हमारा गोल्ड वापस दे दो, take your US dollar. 1971, Prime Minister Indira Gandhi declared as the most popular leader in the world. Nixon and Kissinger not happy about it. They selected 15th August 1971 to declare that the gold convertibility is over. You can't deposit dollar back. I am not going to give you back your gold. All the currencies of the world becomes fiat, which means you can print endlessly out of thin air, backed by nothing. What happens if you print your currency out of thin air, backed by nothing, is that you face inflation. What happens is with the West, they can pass on the cost to the rest of the world because of the reserve currency format. 1973, Kissinger goes Saudi Arabia, oil for security program. Let's sell all the crude oil in dollars. Petrodollar is born. Till 1970s, the Indian subcontinent does not have a single black burqa. Not a single. Do you understand? Till 1971, the Indian subcontinent is called Indian subcontinent. There was no word called South Asia. In 1979, Deng Xiaoping goes to President Carter in US. The deal is US will give technology, you kill your consumption. Deng Xiaoping comes back, imposes a single child policy. The tech sector is born out of the fiat dollar, and the entire reserve currency bubble accumulates in the tech sector. By the end of 1990s, the EU allies realize, let's de-dollarize. They come up with a currency called euro. 1999. United States starts panicking. What to do? They removed the Glass-Steagall requirements in the US banking, mixed commercial banking with the investment banking. So any American deposits money in their account, the bank sweeps it into another account and uses for speculative trade. Fearing the euro currency launch, the United States dragged the NATO into a Yugoslavia war. The valuation of euro currency falls. European allies realize, they say now we won't park our savings in the US dollar. United States brings China into World Trade Organization. European Union says we are not going to park our savings in US dollar or the treasury anymore. We'll do in euro. Deal with China. We pass on every technology. You become the manufacturing hub. In return, you will park your savings in the US dollar and the US treasury. European Union removes their savings from the US dollar as well. And the entire reserve currency bubble accumulated in the IT sector burst violently with 98% valuations gone. The dot-com crash of 2002. This is the impact of the first de-dollarization that happened. The current one is the final one going on. So you understand what is going to happen with the tech sector. Now that they have destroyed the families completely in the West, the fiat dollar endless printing, social benefits coming out of it. The government is supposed to take care of the parents. Parents throw their children out of their homes by 15, 16 in the West. State mera care karta hai, tum niklo. The children start taking loans, credit cards, low rate interest coming from the printing machine. Dollar takes the role of husband, wife, children, father, son. This is how Adam Smith brings 60% divorce rates in the West. Karl Marx is another creature. He brings 60% slave population and state control. Now that the family institution is totally destroyed, they face the 2008 crisis. This time they roll out the printing machine on. The inflation passes on to the rest of the world as usual. With a difference this time, the food inflation caused the Middle East governments to fall. The Arab Spring of 2011. This is the point in time the Arabs realized that we have lost 50% of the crude oil wealth in radicalizing the Indian subcontinent and the Middle East, just to keep the fiat dollar going. Now they are desperate. We have a change in government in 2014. The first visit happens 2015. There was an intolerance wave going on in India. The UAE prince goes back after meeting the prime minister, opens up a tolerance ministry in UAE. 3 days meeting. Plan is chalked out how to de-radicalize the Middle East. By 2018, the prince is sent to Akshardham in Delhi. They finalize yoga, Ayurveda and mandirs. So to keep the dollarization of the world going, they created artificial pockets. POK, Taiwan, Ukraine. Every single neighbor of a healthy economy country becomes rogue. One set of countries get sanctioned, their neighbor gets arms and dollars. The healthy economy country is told, तेरा बाजू वाला रोग है, उसको हम sanction करेंगे. Which means by default you have to go with the dollar. Everybody realized this by 2015. This is what is going on. Plan is chalked out how to demonetize the West. De-dollarization becomes equal to de-radicalization. The Prime Minister comes up with a gold monetization scheme. He said, let's try in India first. Indians देते हैं क्या gold? The scheme fails. Russia, India, China decides, let's buy it from the West now. With the entire Gulf, all the central banks starts collecting gold and silver. The Prime Minister says, let's go for bilateral free trade agreements. क्योंकि multilateral pact में जहां भी जाते हैं वहां पे डॉलर बाय डिफॉल्ट बैठ जाता है. 5-10 कंट्री बैठी है. So each of the country lining up negotiations with each of them. And when the time comes, you will see this free trade agreements converting into non-dollar trade. Russia and China has no clue what's going on. UPI and RuPay comes, sweeps across the countries. Gulf decides now what to do with the fiat dollar reserves. That 50% of their wealth is lost in radicalization of the Indian subcontinent and the Middle East. Countries decide, let's close the chapters of fake animosity with the neighbors everywhere. Ukraine, Taiwan, POK. All time is good time. And I don't see any reason why, political reason why POK should happen after elections. Right? The de-dollarization that happens January 2022, even the US allies say now we no more parking our savings in the US Treasury. Now whatever is printed, the entire inflation goes directly to the Americans. The tech sector layoffs begin. Scripted collapse begins of California, New York, and Chicago. Illegals getting in, LGBTQ, minority, feminism. The tech sector realizes that the printing machine has stopped. We are not going to get those finances. The commercial space is emptying from California. And you see the reflection in Bangalore here. Each of these companies had come to meet the Prime Minister. Along with that, there is an India head in the meeting of the business. The person goes back, announces layoff, vacates offices. BRICS currency work starts. We have recently the foreign minister saying that there's no such plan. You have a summit in August in Africa. A commodities pegged currency, what that means for the world is that the flip in the exchange ratio means that there will be no ability of exports. Even if you want to export, they will not be able to buy. All the artificially propped up cities, as I say, will dilute. Based on NRI remittances and the outsourcing projects. The wave of decolonization along with de-dollarization, which means after these layoffs, the immediate question would be asked on the classroom model कि भाई जब जॉब ही नहीं है तुम इनको 15 साल 4 दीवारी में क्यों पैक कर रहे हो? The British classroom model format. Those colleges and education centers is the next in line. Then comes the digital currency, the front desk banking jobs, and the ATMs. The entire service sector that was born out of that fiat dollar is going to be hit. Which means it is the parents' responsibilities in all those cities. Just like those misbehaving families in the West, that this misbehaving children over here in these urban cities. The 29th case I just handled 2 days back, his salary was 1.5 crore, came down to 39 lakhs. He was disturbed, obviously. The people were surprised when, the kid is graduating and then फादर को 20-25-40 साल का एक्सपीरियंस है, उससे ज्यादा सैलरी वो ले रहे हैं एज अ फ्रेशर, because you don't know what the Federal Reserve was up to with this scheme. The entire startup valuation, बाइजूस का भी आया न्यूज में, नो प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी स्टिल रनिंग, अब प्रिंटिंग मशीन बंद हो गए. So just as Hollywood is vacating California gradually, you shouldn't be surprised if Bollywood would be vacating Mumbai. Shouldn't be surprised. The fact that the East India Company came to Surat, and then this entire politics happened of keeping Surat artificially low to prop up Mumbai. Those business families will be back to Surat, with Surat and Dubai as alternate base. The stock exchange going to the gift city. And the entire valuations of these artificially propped up tier 1 cities goes down. So when we talk about a Bharat of 2047, you understand the 100 years reversal that is happening in terms of currency, that's going to come in terms of currency. अभी 2 प्रेडिक्शन मैंने आज ही सुबह ट्वीट किया है वापस, जो ट्रू डेट के साथ डाला है. I had predicted that Dharma will come back to China. Dalai Lama has just commented that they are seeking me out. I'll tell you the history behind it. 1962 war. The Chinese Communist Party, before 1962, the Chinese ambassador to US said that India is ruling China culturally without firing a bullet across for centuries. So in 1962, in the CCP plenary, they decide that we are going to do cultural revolution. But ये religious practices में तो बहुत ज़्यादा pride है, Buddhism, Taoism, etc. तो Chinese लोगों का पहले pride निकालना है from these Indian practices. They launch a war. They launch a war in 1962. From 1965, they begin the cultural revolution in China, finish off all the religious practices from within China. Now that Xi Jinping has realized that the dollar made Chinese aged before they become rich, after working as a manufacturing factory for the world for 40 years, they made 3 trillion in reserve, 3 trillion in profits. United States printed 14 trillion in just the last 3 years, distributed Americans for free. Xi Jinping realized this. October Politburo National Congress, he removes the last 2 elements from the Politburo who were pro-exports. He learns that the Deng Xiaoping and the deal with Carter of single child policy in exchange of technology, they are approaching a 4-to-1 crisis. 4 grandparents, 2 parents, कमाने वाला एक, उसको wife भी नहीं मिल रही for marriage. By 2029, they will have about 40 million men without any women to marry. 40 million. Thanks to the dollar. China. Thanks to the dollar. The Prime Minister, before going to the visit to the US, this visit, he tells media, we are not trying to supplant any other country. This is after the rumors going on about friend shoring and decoupling from China and friend shoring. Friend shoring माने वो factories अभी इधर लगेगी. Prime Minister says no. We are not supplanting any other country, which means we are not going to do that dollar referencing trade. You are not going to get cheaper exports. Xi Jinping realizes this. Now he is saying, वो सारी festivals बाहर निकालो जो 1962 में बाद में खत्म कर दी हमने. Let's go back to religions. Deletes all communist theories from that state guidelines. Each of those. No Marx, no Lenin, no Mao. Only Xi Jinping thought. (1979) reverses, 1962 will now reverse. See how the world is changing. Children are coming back to the parents' house now in the West, not able to pay EMI. Soon with this cities. After there, it's going to happen here. I've seen those credit card notices being issued to the Bangaloreans. I have the bunch on my phone. Pending dues. Kids using BMW and Mercedes with EMIs. Printing machine has stopped. So whatever that happened in that artificially propped up urbanization with that fiat dollar and remittances and that endless printing machine supplying, all those urban cities are going to be diluted. Now comes the time for tier 2 and tier 3 cities to come up, and all those sectors which were artificially destroyed, manufacturing, farming, food processing, logistics, which means you will have to produce something real. None of the certificates are going to ensure, coming out from this British classroom model, will not be able to ensure even 5 years of work. Don't get surprised. Not even 5 years, I'm telling you. The company structure are going to change. In the package itself, they will make models of partnership or agency, something linked to some real work. And skills learning. You have Sanjeev Sanyal's article 2 days back talking about how we can reduce classroom to 3 months a year with digital and free learning. And I'm well aware the kind of mafia the sector has become in the south. Thanks to the job model approach which has become traditional in the southern part of India. So this entire economics, where you believe in this one life concept, the West used women as a unit of labor for temporary GDP, a GDP formula which is anyways wrong. They've lost all the birth rates, which means the man factor of production is not available. And what happens when the man factor of production is not available? In this book, I'll just read you a paragraph. This is a chapter, The Future of Europe. The new hub of refugees being shuttlecocked from east to west and west to east will be Europe in this century. The horrors of coloniality will bite back as the status of Europe gets downgraded to its reality, which is that it is not a continent. A partition for Britain looks imminent, not just from the Scotland standpoint, but also from the radical separatist calls in the coming decades. The cheap diplomacy method of importing economic and political criminals from all over the world will haunt Europe. The ill-conceived definition of secularism will render Europe European-less in a few decades. The illusion of all religions being equal will result in massive crusades and street wars throughout and beyond. The future of NATO alliance providing security to Europe looks bleak overall. In the background of Russian ventures in Moldova, Crimea, and now Ukraine, the era of de-dollarization is also looming, with serious possibilities of West being cut off from all kinds of supplies from Asia. This is a chapter on the future of Europe. Now, what you see in France right now. So they use the excuse of not having the man factor of production, so we need to import radicals. Now it is very funny how this operates. As I said, the capitalists first exploit, then the Karl Marx are born for freebies. Capitalism is always born out of family and traditional values when it is born. So those Sundar Pichai or Satya Nadella not giving smartphones to their own kids. Capitalism is always born like that. After a point in time, the capitalism wants cheaper supply of labor, consistent cheaper supply of labor. So they sponsor illegal, they sponsor LGBTQ, minorities, feminism, individualism wave. Once they sponsor all these waves and get a cheaper labor of supply for time being, the state goes broke. Once the state goes broke, the capitalists move to the next state. Sounds familiar? This is what the left do. Left enters a state, opens the door for radicals. Radicals come in. Radicals kill the left, take over power. Left goes to next state. In Iran, the radicals and left together did the Islamic Revolution. Radicals came to power. The very first week they started killing the left. Then the left goes to the next state. So once the left takes over Kerala, the radicals are going to take power from them. The left moves to Karnataka, then open the doors of Karnataka. Then radicals enter Karnataka. Bengal, Radicals take over the power from the left. Left moves to Bihar. Opens the door of Bihar. Radicals move in Bihar. And capitalists love this. The illegals, the feminism, the LGBTQ minority. It ensures consistent, cheap labor supply. Then the state goes bankrupt. Then the capitalists move to the next state. So these are the cycles which happen. Now when we look at the changes that are coming in, as I said that these sectors are going to go up, which means the parents will have to see to it that they give an atmosphere to the next generation to fail. And of course, state should also have some role, which is to say, why would you like to call someone who's employing people, making profits, illiterate? I don't see any logic in calling that person illiterate. My understanding is that the state is supposed to go to that entrepreneur, assess his skills at his venue, and issue him the certificate then and there. Because the very first challenge when a kid comes with a business idea to the parent says, "Pehle to degree complete kar." The state should have the responsibility of giving that security of mind that if we are going to go for some kind of entrepreneurship, we are going to assess the skills of the entrepreneur at his venue and at his convenience. We are going to issue him a degree right then and there. So if you are to counter the Adam Smith capitalism and Karl Marx communism, you have to revive those 15 designs of shirts which were killed. Which means you should not be buying anything which is standardized. If you want to, as a society, as a customer, if you want to revive entrepreneurship in the society, you should not be buying anything which the next 5-10 people have or are using. Diversity is the antidote to extreme capitalism. No standardization. And this society which it's the only civilization which celebrates ethical profits as a community festival on Dhanteras. It's the only civilization on this planet celebrating ethical profits. You have those Shubh Labh stickers. That means only ethical profits is supposed to enter my home. This is the civilization which puts that Sri Sava on the book on the top, pledging that I'm not going to charge anybody more than 25% of cost as my profit. This is that civilization. This is that civilization where there is no concept of individual wealth. Our words are Sampatti, Sam plus Patti, Lakshmi, Laks plus me. Sampatti means that which is built together. It is talking about family unit entrepreneurship. Lakshmi means that which is spent on a collective objective. There is no concept of individual wealth in Sanatan Economics. Absolutely none. Because we are talking about life cycle preservation in this model. And the only way the wealth of nations pass on is via family unit economics. Capitalism is saying that individual is a unit of economics. Communism is saying unknown mob is a unit of economics. Only Sanatan Economics is saying that family unit is the smallest part of the economics. You're not surprised Karl Marx and Adam Smith both forgot to mention the word family in their economic theories. You are shocked. Every single economic decision has an immediate repercussion to the family members. How is it both of them forgot to mention the word family in their economic models? So both capitalism and communism is nothing but exporting the family sacrifices to some unknown people outside of the family members. Talking about the job model, when it does not empower men, how it will empower women? It doesn't empower anybody. It's not a natural state of being for any human being. Now, I do understand that not everybody is going to turn entrepreneur, but that doesn't seem to be the priority objective of the education format that we have right now. Every flight of money of the family savings moving to the stock market capital is the flight of your human rights, your individual rights, and the sovereignty of your nation. Don't be surprised tomorrow if these companies define your human rights. Don't be surprised. Because after every capitalist exploitation, they come up with a communist solution. Which is why after this entire mountain of debt that they have collected in the West, they are coming with a digital dollar. It's a communist currency to trace what transaction is happening where. And one fine day in the West, you shouldn't be surprised if they come up with a social credit score. You wrote something on social media we didn't like, the access to your money is. Now they're coming up with a concept of universal basic income, saying that AI is going to take off all the jobs. People are dancing over there with this concept. They don't know that the universal basic income means the state is going to steal the money from the capitalist pocket and do those socialist freebies. You think capitalists will not come up with new viruses? All the best. So all those ideas of capitalism, extreme capitalism, where companies take over governance top to bottom, this is what has collapsed the West. And this fiat dollar printing, endless printing, it is collapsing because for every real physical asset, they have floated 1,000 times more paper assets. For 1 gram of gold, real gold existing in the market, they have 1,000 ETF papers floating in the market. Imagine if those 1,000 people go and say, give me physical gold in exchange of this paper, what would happen? So they artificially destroyed the valuations of all the sectors, all real production and real assets, just to keep the fiat dollar going. Thousand pieces of those assets, paper assets, now determining the value of the real one. Instead of the asset value giving valuation to the derivative, The derivatives are giving valuation to the real asset. You shouldn't wonder why the collapse is coming. Because people ask me that you are saying that America is aligned to this decision. How is that possible? People ask me this question. After raising the debt limit, within 1 month, the debt has gone to 32 trillion from 31. And every single debt means that you are spending from the pocket of future generation right now. That is what debt means. I have predicted 3 INR for 2029, $1. You understand the kind of change that is coming. So de-dollarization is going to be equal to de-radicalization, is equal to de-missionarization, because no more missionaries are going to get this free cash coming from their machine. Is equal to de-communism, because no more now you can declare freebies that the politicians do, because the commodity, the currency is going to peg to commodities, which means the fiscal discipline will have to be maintained. And this is also equal to decolonization, that the British classroom model of converting the society into jobbers is going to end with it. With it, it will end the entire colonization of minds that has happened, that everything standardization is being accepted, confusing the Western as modern. And if you have to understand the difference between the East and West, just look at the language that you have. They say groundbreaking, we say Bhumi Pujan. They say housewarming party, we say Grih Pravesh. So this dumbing down of the civilization with those fiat dollar cities, specifically when I see those people talking to infants in English language with infants, spare the horror, that kid, bichara. Because this renaming is an ancient war strategy. The first generation loses identity. The second generation loses pride. The third generation becomes anti-origin with renaming. It's an ancient strategy of war. So when we talk about a Bharat of 2047, how many of this generation are prepared to face the kind of changes that are coming, that if you are because this time when the West comes, the West always comes searching for you, right? तो 400 साल पहले आए थे, वापस ढूंढते हुए आएंगे. This time when the West comes, how much are you prepared, how much you know about yourself to give gyan to them, right? So you will have to dig up your ancient past, dig up that massive formula which was working so well. We were able to give 27% to the world GDP, which is the family unit entrepreneurship. There's also confusion about the word Hindu. Now, there are many explanations of how that word came. Indus River, Hindu Sagara, stuff like that. The observation that I have is, why should I be named with what someone likes to address me as? Outsider. if I was named Bharat, and what we have is Sanatan, why do we dumb down to a small word? Now that you know the difference between Dharma and let me tell you, the founders of Sikhism, Buddhism and Jainism, all three were Kshatriyas. So there is no doubt about who came from where. Sanatan is that we have. And this north-south divide totally up based on language or whatever. Particularly, this was the exact reason why we lost. We didn't lost because we were weak. No. We lost because we had an ultra-modern governance of autonomous Janapadas, due to which we were not able to consolidate defense in the center. Do not fall for this language and regional stuff. So when, some of the posts that I have done on Constitution 2.0, क्योंकि वो इंजन पंचर्ड इंजन आपको लगाया गया स्टार्टिंग से ट्रेन को, the cut copy paste document that you have, to see to it that you never get the numerical strength to amend it. The words socialist, secular and democratic, what my post that I have posted, to be replaced with dharmic, familist and humanist. Familist, LY. And Bharat, that is Bharatvarsh. That is a union of Janapadas. And when we say Janapadas, the context is that जहां पे भी मेरा person का पैर पड़ता है, that is country, that is my country. There is no primitive concept of nation state where you can do this regional factionalism. I am saying मेरा बंदा है जहां भी उसने पैर रखा, Janapadas. So if it is required, if you feel that this being a man-made document, now that you have a new parliament, a Sangol is put over there, and you understand that it is for the whole century, for the Indian subcontinent, not just you. There's a mural of Akhand Bharat over there, Chanakya over there. And in 1947, the transfer of power a mistake, because you took the Sangol, you gave it to Mountbatten. We don't agree to that. We don't believe the Britishers were a legitimate ruler. Why do we take transfer of power from them? Which is exactly why what the Prime Minister did was required. That the Dharma Gurus do the Rajyabhishek of the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister submits the Sangol to the people's will, which is the Parliament. Who is Mountbatten? Huh? And when you see this transfer of power, the first duty of an independent state is to fix the maps. This fellow cut, copy, pasted the entire British maps, which nobody believes, neither China believes that this is the map, nor do we believe, nor Bangladesh believes, nor Nepal believes, nor Pakistan believes. The first duty is to fix the map. But since that you have done a transfer of power, you cut, copy, pasted the entire Western template on this civilization, along with the legal framework. And the document was made such a punctured engine given to you that the train never starts. It's a man-made document which has undergone amendments. So if a point comes where you need to rewrite, you need to rewrite. why is this civilization, which has had the advanced autonomous Janapada structure, to be dumbed down to a nation state format? So in the Sanatan Economics model, that's the third book which is coming. There are 5 ecosystems, one of which is obviously the Mandir ecosystem, where I believe that the wealth, the social interaction has to pass through the Bhagwan, so that there's no commercial behavior between the Guru and the Shishya, between the one who is taking the prasad and the one who is putting the money over there. And then there is no socialist freebies in that society. The second ecosystem being about the family unit entrepreneurship. And if you have to strengthen that, the parents will have to invest their savings in the next generation. The classroom model format will change. But are you open to allow your kids to fail? That is the question. I don't believe the next generation is out of bread and butter. I can understand the previous generations would have had some struggle. So those kids are coming back to the families in the West because they are not able to pay EMIs. In those families in the West, before the kid comes to graduation, 2-3 parents changes. Don't be surprised now that the children have come back, they won't allow divorces. You come back to the same Sanatan concept, where marriage is not a contract. There is no scope for individualism again. So the fact that is clear in terms of the concept of money, that it is spoiling the society and the family relationship, because they want to create zombies who would be hyper in consumption, and that is only possible when the families are broken. The fact that 70% of the US is on medications. There is no case of depression with the Indian parenting and a flying chappal. उसको कभी डिप्रेशन नहीं होता. So we have to come back to those traditional family values, where the elders are respected, the family wisdom is passed on to the next generation, the savings is invested in that next generation. The emotional quotient only passes on to the child from the grandparents. Parents are incapable to pass on EQ to the kids. It's not possible. Parents can pass on only IQ. They cannot pass on EQ. Those families who do not have grandparents, those are the cases of suicide. So the kind of changes that are coming, the role of Bharat that is going to be from Saudi Arabia to Laos, Cambodia, when we say, what that means is that the world is going to come to seek the wisdom of ancient India, but how much are you aware of what that was? Which is where you need to put your efforts in. So the skills-based education has to happen in the Mandir campuses. The family unit is to be kept intact. And entrepreneurship should be the goal not just of the family but also the education format. Self-employment, entrepreneurship. And then you will be able to deliver the Sanatan wisdom to the rest of the world. You have to prove the economic might that you have brought within your nation. Because numbers में ही समझ में आता है वेस्ट को. So when we say that this century is going to be an Indian century, these next 3 decades have come after 2000 years. And believe me, Indians have the highest private per capita gold with them. That is the Sanatan wisdom. वो सारे भगवान गोल्ड में ही पाए जाते हैं, डायमंड तो ये सब अभी निकला है. That is in gold always. Indians carry more gold than the central banks of the entire planet put together. And if we are going to get a commodities pegged currency, what that means is Indians are going to be the biggest spending bunch on this planet. Don't be surprised if the Indian farmer woman goes for a massage there. Don't be surprised. These are going to be the only spending tourists in the world. But now you need to concretize that by empowering the next generation with entrepreneurship. So in this new world, when you see the 3 nations that we have today, the 3 biggies of Asia, a country, Russia, which is the richest in terms of commodities, in terms of natural resources, they will have soon the Arctic melting, which is another bunch of resource, and the new sea lanes they are going to get. They have a currency which can be pegged with these commodities. They do not have trade and manufacturing. China has manufacturing to back up their currency, but the currency does not have a reserve currency features. मतलब उसमें सेव कोई नहीं करेगा. कल को पता लगा ये ब्रिक्स करेंसी इज बीइंग मैनेज्ड बाय शी जिनपिंग, तो ब्रिक्स के बाकी सारे मेंबर्स भी निकल लेंगे, 4 मेंबर्स भी. So it can become a trading currency, it cannot become a reserve currency. Indian rupee has reserve currency features, but it does not have the manufacturing backup, trade backup that the level that it should have, which means none of the 3 can bring about a unipolar world, which is why they are going for a compromise in BRICS and trying a multipolar world. And since this BRICS is going to be a basket of currency of all the participant nations, no country bossing around, no country can sanction anybody, and despite a bilateral conflict or even a war, the currency is not going to be impacted. When this new currency comes up, it will kill the trading currency demand from the dollar. That is one section gone. It will kill the savings currency demand for the dollar. That is the second section gone. Third section, the West will have commodities to peg, which is what they say officially they have 8,000 tons of gold, which means they can repeg the dollar. But then the family institution is totally destroyed to bring any kind of productivity. If tomorrow a made in USA product is to be consumed and to compete with a Asian or an Indian Chinese product, what I have predicted by 2025, 60% cut in the salaries of Americans, 25% cut in the defense budget, 35% cut in the social benefits. And it comes down to the near real tiny value that the US economy is. After this entire accumulated reserve currency bubble bursts and 180 nations pull out from the Western assets valuation. And from what I see, the gift city in Gujarat will have a role of a mini World Bank for this de-dollarization process, because nobody is going to trust Russians or the Chinese handling the currency. So the only bridge between the East and West is India. And you should not be surprised. You should not be surprised that when these companies shift and settle in India and the top management converts from a white to an NRI, from an NRI to a resident Indian, and then we call the shots from Delhi in all the Western capitals. So that is what the Bharat of 2047 be, that if it is Berlin, Washington, Paris, London, Canberra. By 2030, the Indian foreign minister is going to be the most powerful man on this planet. And it is out of question that you can even meet the Indian Prime Minister. Out of question. So this entire demographic dividend is possible if we switch the education format and bring back the same family unit entrepreneurship with which we were giving this 27% world GDP. This is exactly why the farm laws were opposed, because they feared कि जो जनरेशन अपना हिस्सा लेके एग्रीकल्चर लैंड तुड़वा के अर्बन सिटीज में आए थे, आफ्टर फार्म लॉज, if a fresh capital infusion happens in the agriculture sector और सारी लैंड अगर कंसोलिडेट हो गई, you understand what will happen. So these are the sectors that you have opportunity in. तो अभी जो बैंगलोर के केसेस जो मैं हैंडल कर रहा हूँ, तो मेरे को पूछते हैं अभी क्या करना है पैकेज, तो ये आई से फार्मिंग एंड दे आर लाइक, so the entire tech sector will have to work on technologies which can assist manufacturing, farming, food processing, logistics, precious metals, defense, because all these Western defense companies will be shifting here, settling operations. We will be manufacturing, they'll be doing tech transfer, we'll be doing exports of this defense from here, and we look at net security provision from Saudi Arabia to Laos, Cambodia, as I said. So all these sectors are now open for, they are out of artificial suppression in valuation after the pegged currency. So all your opportunity lies in these sectors. And obviously the service sector, वो fake पूरा glorified job वाला model, it's going to take a hit. Which is why it makes sense that I had to come to South India. In Gujarat and Rajasthan, the kids already know that it's stupid, classroom. They already know about it. So by the age of 2022, they will have 2-3 shops of their own. वो ग्रेजुएशन खाली कंप्लीट कर रहा है साइड में, उसको पता है वो बेवकूफ़ी है, उसको ऑलरेडी पता है. And that I know that in South India there is a preference by birth. सिलेक्ट भी हो जाता है ना कौन सा स्ट्रीम, वो अच्छा वो स्ट्रीम्स भी जा रहे हैं, कॉमर्स, साइंस और आर्ट्स, these streams are going. So you will have a plate kind of a thing where you can pick up. म्यूजिक के साथ engineering करना है, एक्टिंग के साथ मेडिसिन करना है. The kid can pick up what he wants to do. You shouldn't be surprised, you will get, अगर आपको कुछ स्टार्टअप ट्राई करना है तो 1 साल का आपको मिलेगा. Nobody can cancel your admissions. You can try out a startup. So this entire education mafia that's being created, it's going to collapse. With the digital education, free access to education, and skills-based model with some months of physical classroom if the student opts for. These are the kind of change. Forget that you are going to get a certificate ensuring 5 years of work. Forget that. You will get in the work format that you do 1 week a month to pick up the skill that you want, the latest skill that has come. But you're not going to get a paper which will operate for 5-10 years. Right? That is the kind of change with the new Bharat. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shah. That was really awesome and quite interesting analysis. You have really provided us so much food for thought with this kind of detailed analysis on what happened so far and what's going to happen and how Bharat is going to be by 2047. You have really covered almost all the topics we could think of. Thanks so much for that. And we have already seen your predictions on geopolitical events like Doklam, Article 370 abrogation, LAC standoff, Balakot, Ukraine and Taiwan conflict, and even de-dollarization you mentioned now, all coming through. We have seen all that. So whatever predictions you gave now on these guys, we believe they're all going to happen, and we're hoping for all that to happen. Thanks so much. Do we have time for question and session? Okay. Before we start the question and answer session, let me quickly ask you one simple question. Whatever anti-India activities are taking place in India, the origins are all outside India. That's what we understand. And from your observation, what is your take on how India is handling and how far India is successful and in controlling those forces?
So, one of the challenges that we have in terms of radicalization, and then some of the thoughts which are popular these days about government not taking stand or the expectations not met of the Hindus in some pockets. I do believe that there is a short-term solution and then there is a long-term solution. The short-term solution window has closed. If you wanted to do those kind of solutions, it was 1970s. When we talk about, because I've seen some of the comments, Nupur Sharma and then some more where you be indicated that you should be engaging with the problems on street yourself physically. Well, first of all, we Gujaratis don't believe in physical crime. Second thing, when you look at this kind of radical problems that you face on screen, you understand that one side has 14 out of 15 kids to send on screen. You have one. Right? So, if anybody is indicating that those kind of solutions can work, I don't think so, because if you wanted to do that kind of thing, it was 1970s. So in terms of long-term solution, which I do believe the work is on, is that when the Middle East is going to de-radicalize completely, when the fake experiment called Pakistan collapses, which is all this is going to be through this decade, then you have to be able to bring back the entire converted chunk back to the cultural ties, back to their cultural roots in a celebratory form. This is This is what my understanding is. Now, yes, you have a question.
Now the entrepreneurs are facing a lot of problems with fake rumors and fake news, especially algorithm. Many entrepreneurs which are hard targets for anyone to attack them the same way. So how to protect entrepreneurs? Otherwise it will be very difficult. You cannot say the entrepreneurs. And one thing is, another thing is change the mindset also from employment side to entrepreneur sector. And we have to provide every support to the entrepreneur who wants to become. And that is the most important of this. The mindset is to change. To spread from right from the beginning. I think this will multiple programs are taken and successful stories are shown to the students. I think they will be motivated to become entrepreneurs.
So, since the Indian corporates are for the first time going to the global stage with this kind of a state mechanism, which is a pro, they are going to be prone to kind of attacks that we saw in Adani FPO. Well, I predicted that on 23rd Jan, about 8-9 days before the FPO. Because as soon as I saw that Qatar has taken a stake in Credit Suisse, I said that this FPO is going to be attacked. So, when companies go global, they will have to learn to be able to counter the problems that some factions in the West would pose at them. Either you should, I don't believe कि रोना धोना इज अ सॉल्यूशन. तो या तो आपके पास डीप स्टेट टूल्स होने चाहिए वही कंट्री में जो उनको वहीं पे न्यूट्रलाइज कर दे, या तो फिर आपके कॉरपोरेट को भी ऐसे टूल्स बनाने पड़ेंगे जो वहाँ के डीप स्टेट को टारगेट कर सके. So, if somebody is trying to attack, and I do believe that a lot of opposition elements were also involved. And my understanding is it was a fresher chartered accountant from Ahmedabad who made this report. Hindenburg का खाली लेबल ही है, उस रिपोर्ट में कुछ था ही नहीं. So, very stupid kind of a report. तो ये पूरा एक नेक्सस बना के, and I do believe कि एक faction है जो who is not okay with because they have this white racism, they are not okay with probably India's requirements of having more and more resident Indians in the top management. They have selected India as the global path, they are going to shift and operate here, but they are not okay with a brown skin leading them. That is one faction which I believe was involved in this Adani FPO case, because understand that this, when the global deep back to that, instead of what we have done in the Western template about copying the independent director concept, instead of we should have had the ancient India Shreshtin kind of a director in the board, right? So the book that I'm working on, Sanatan Economics model, in that I have stipulated some certain policy recommendations which can be done by the state, and what kind of incentives can be given, and how we come back to that ancient India model. But basically a family unit entrepreneurship, even if it's a big corporate, that is always better compared to unknown people in the board or management who can resign and go away any moment. Right? Those are more risky. So when this Adani FPO thing happened, and we saw a lot of jibes being taken, saying that government financial entities have taken stake, right? तो उनको नहीं पता है कि being a family unit model is the biggest insurance. क्योंकि अगर suppose one brother is not able to give a meritorious output, the other brother is going to set off the financial or any kind of liability that comes up for that corporate. And we have seen cases. So none of the Western indexes or models or ranking are going to be as effective what ancient India experience been, right? So when these banks lend money to these corporates, they are lending it because the family members are involved in the business. The family's reputation is at stake, not because their numbers are great, right? Because family is the biggest insurance. So I do believe that we have to come back to that model.
Thank you, Ankit. It's a fantastic speech. I think you deserve much bigger audience because you cover economics, you cover de-dollarization, you cover geopolitics, and when you repeated it as genius, I realized the kind of
I'm too young to be
but
genius.
as someone who lived in California, I lived in California, I worked in Silicon Valley for more than a decade, and now I'm the British Chamber of Commerce Energy convener. So the kind of entire journey that you talked about is clearly happening. Now we see that a lot of people live in California and a lot of homelessness is coming in and people losing jobs. So I think my question is, we are entering this new phase of all sustainability, where renewable energy, solar, electric vehicles, and the combination between China and India, where China is kind of forming 80% of all the vital minerals that are essential for manufacturing of solar and electric vehicles. So what should be the game plan, from the Sanatan Dharma to kind of retain that manufacturing capability? Because we have soft power, but hard power comes from the manufacturing. So it's very, very important that we kind of take that manufacturing capability and take some of this from the China. So what are your thoughts on this? Thank you.
So I'd like to put up some examples. The day the National Congress of the Chinese Communist Party closed last year, the very next day, Rajiv Gandhi Foundation had the FCRA license cancelled. Then you see Amir Khan not launching his latest movie in China. And then you see that we are already working in BRICS together. Then you understand that they do not have a currency which can be a reserve currency. Nobody would park savings in yuan. So they do understand that India is required if a BRICS currency has to be operated. And then the fact that in a barter, which is the BRICS is going to be an evolved barter format, if you have excess manufacturing capacities, you do not get a fair deal. So it is incumbent on them to bring down their capacities. Now, you need to understand that when we talk about the re-emergence of Asia in the global order, it clearly means that Russia, India, China are going to demarcate their individual spheres of influence. Means you won't poke nose here, I won't poke nose there. So in the long term, medium to long term, after the BRICS currency, the primary hiccups and everything, once it settles, 1 year after the success of BRICS currency, I will not be surprised all three, China, Russia and US, taking notes from Delhi. Because as I said, India is going to be the only bridge between the East and the West. And when you see that Macron is pushing India to arrange for an invitation for BRICS, that I've already predicted that many European allies are going to join BRICS. And the absence of response shows that the BRICS have decided that the Western world is not going to have any role in the new decision making. So when the West joins BRICS, it will be and whenever it pegs the currency, it will be having a follower kind of a role rather than a decision maker. So after the end of the Ukraine conflict, you see a completely deindustrialized EU, demilitarized, de-weaponized NATO. The currency is being decimated, the economy is being decimated, which means that China will be able to trade with only those countries who have real assets and commodities backing them. So when the BRICS currency setup comes, you will see a new agency coming up which will be certifying and measuring the commodities. क्योंकि सारी countries बोल रही मेरे को lithium मिला, मेरे को gold मिला. That's not how it works. So a new agency will come up which will measure and certify the commodities that you want to peg with your currency, and then you will have this agency talking about how these trade of commodities will happen. So I will not be surprised if China cooperates, not just cooperates, that they are being told that you change, when you invest in India, you change the top leadership into an Indian. Chinese are clearly being told, the West is being subtly told. No big difference, दोनों को बोला ही है. So the Chinese, I believe that they are now reviving their birth rates. They are coming back to the religious stuff. They will require a Indian hand holding in. See, Asia is not going to pass on now the power elsewhere, outside Asia, which means that a cooperation is going to be very obvious. Now, if you see the kind of tuning, as I said, that now that it has become a Xi Jinping party, he is exposing all the ex-CCP linkages in every countries, which is why after the Congress, the Rajiv Gandhi Foundation faced action. And this guy has not released his movie there because he is fearing probably that the past revenues, the way they must have been spent in India, those files must have been passed on by Xi Jinping to Delhi. So he hasn't released the movie, Lal Singh Chadda, in China. So he is going to crack down on all ex-CCP linkages which were damaging these nations, because it's now a Xi Jinping party. There's no more a CCP. खाली label है.
First, thank you, Pragna Bharati, for calling you, giving us so brief lecture. It will take days for us to understand where is what you told.
अच्छा.
It will not even 1% answer here. I should go home, understand okay, what all now, see a YouTube link and try to dig the things. My one question, you already answered about Dalai Lama. You gave a hint about BOK. Why it will happen before election, why have to. So are you seeing anything happening?
I am saying that I don't see any logic of doing it after elections.
Are you giving a hint about that?
You will know. So, it's a process. Basically, you have to fix the response from within Pakistan. It's a script which will play, and it takes time to script the internal response from Pakistan. After? You never know. All time is good time. Now that you have the first Jain monks going across in Pakistan and going to a Derasar, and then you have the POK, this side of POK that you did this Pran Pratishtha for the Sharda Peeth, and the Mandir Ecosystem, as I had suggested on my Twitter post, that's the only probable good cash flow if you make Indians free in and out moving, and that the Sri Lankan president has said कि borderless कर दो tourism के लिए. So let's see.
Undebatable talk. I don't have any questions on the matter back. And as a senior civil servant, we feel extremely happy. We are very safe in the hands of your wonderful youngsters of Kutta Kala Bharat 2047 beyond me. I can only visualize that. So you really made it true today, youngster. as he rightly said, you covered many facets. And it was absolutely stunning because in Andhra Pradesh or Telangana would have many people sitting and giving pravachana. You stood with a wonderful kurta of yours and made things very, very clear. At this age, the clarity of thought and the confidence levels, I feel today proud once again to be Indian and listening you today. Extremely hearty congratulations. Wonderful. Thanks to Pragna Bharati. Uttishta Bharat, I wish at least in future, we become real Uttishta. And by name, you are Ankit to Bharat. Salute.
You want to ask a question? Can you please come forward quickly?
Sir,
Running short of time, so
we can discuss offline. We can discuss offline in the lobby.
yeah, okay. We're running short of time, so you can discuss later on. Now, we have a small token of appreciation to Dr. Ankit Shah. To give it away to him, I request now the Uday Shankar Garu of Akashvani to please come on to the dais.
So glad that I am here today.
Thank you, sir.
Excellent.
Thank you, Uday Shankar. Now, may I request Balaji Chupla Garu, please come out to the desk to propose vote of thanks for this evening's program.
Hari Om, Namaskar, Jai Shri Ram. It's been a fantastic evening for me personally, and I'm sure it's the same for you all. It's time to express our gratitude to one and all here. We sincerely thank Dr. Ankit Shah. Sir, thank you for your valuable time and probably your patience both at Kalinganagar and Hyderabad. We thank Abhishek ji from Mr. Bharat for coordinating this entire event. So thank you, sir. We thank Kolkata College management for all the support of the infrastructure provided. We thank all the audience making this wonderful session for the evening. And some special thanks goes to Uday Shankar Garu. Thank you for making it up. And Padmaja Garu, as always, for the Vande Mataram recital. And Jasika Prabhakar Garu, former bank employee, and Subraj Garu for the Dharma Gallant. Thank you. Sir, one small upward of appreciation and the kind of story what you've taken from 1947 to 2047 is 100 years. But आपकी जो टिप्पणी है इन बीच में तो आउट ऑफ द बॉक्स थिंकिंग आपकी प्रेडिक्शन जो है मेरे हिसाब से आपकी 108 की माला तो तैयार हो गई और ऊपर से जो आपने लास्ट में जो बोला था तो 2019 में INR I mean USD 1 USD will be 3 INR वो तो माउंट मेरू है 150 में. Thank you for that.
Thanks.
That's very touching.
We would also like to thank Rajesh Garu. He has been with us since yesterday morning. He took us to Karimnagar and he introduced us to a very big team there. We had many professionals, chartered accountants coming there for the interaction program. And this entire day also he's been with us, driving us around parts of Telangana and also introducing so many things about our culture and history to Ankit ji. So even though I'm from Telangana, even I learned so many things. So this is a special mention for Rajesh ji. Thank you so much.
Thank you one and all. Can we all close the session by,
There's one question here.
you want to take it?
Offline lena? Whose it is? Whose question is this?
Yeah, that's
Come.
thanks for saying. Can we all stand up for national anthem?
पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल गंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मागे गाहे तव जय गाथा जनगण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे
भारत माता की
जय
Even time for news will remain again from on behalf of Ankit Shah.